Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up part 2, and this is probably going to be kind of like a really short video because I don't have a lot of books to talk about. I have 2 books that I finished in the past 2 weeks, and I also have very similar feelings on both of these books. I will say that I've been DNFing a lot of books lately, and partially also just haven't been reading a whole lot. So yeah, this will be very short. So the 2 books I read this month were The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro and Three Daughters of Eve by Elif Shafak, and these are both books that I think I rated 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. They both lean towards like the 3.5 star mark in my head, but I also don't feel like they're quite that low either. Like they feel more like 3.75, if that means anything, which really it doesn't. Anyways, so in The Remains of the Day, you are following this butler named Stevens. I don't even know if they say his first name in this entire book, but he is an English butler who has been serving for basically his entire life, and this is like towards the end of his career as a butler. He receives a letter from a former maid who used to work with him, and it basically gets him like reminiscing about the past. The household that he used to work for was like a very prominent English household. The head of the house was like a very important person, having very important people and politicians over at his house. This book is set in like the 1950s or 60s, I want to say, in terms of like present day, but like the height of this butler's career and this household was right around like World War II era. And so this is like a very quiet British novel of like this butler looking back on his life and his career and this great person that he served for almost his entire life and how that compares to where his life is now. And yeah, like I said, I enjoyed this book quite a bit. It's again a very quiet English novel. It's very slow going at the beginning. You don't really know what exactly is going on. So the other book that I've read from Kazuo Ishiguro was Never Let Me Go, and that has like a very similar vibe where at the beginning you think you're reading one story, but that's not really what the story is about. That Never Let Me Go has like much more of a quote-unquote twist to it. This one I wouldn't say has a twist, but the more you learn about the story, the more layers you realize there are happening here. This entire book is told from the butler's point of view, as if he is telling the story to someone. You start to realize the farther you get into the story, like his own biases and his own blind spots, and even just his own way of telling the story. He's very reserved, and so he doesn't divulge into certain things that may be more emotional or more problematic, I suppose is the best word, without giving anything away. But it's kind of this really beautiful look at this man who has been taught this very specific way of life and taught a very specific way that he is supposed to handle his career and his life as a butler. Now that he's at the end of his career, looking back, and he starts to think about things in a different way and in a different light, and starts to see how much the world and society has changed and how different things are now, and whether or not those choices were the right choices or the way he lived his life was the best way to live his life. It's a really, really beautiful book. I will say, again, it's very quiet, very slow moving. I didn't love the ending of this book, but I did enjoy it overall. So yeah, that's why I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars, because it's so well written, and I have a lot of heart for Stevens. And the way that Kazuo Ishiguro is able to hint at things and leave things unsaid but not so vague that the reader can't understand what's happening is like really, really well done. So yeah, if you haven't read The Remains of the Day yet, I do recommend it a lot. I have seen the criticism of that there is a level of attachment that you feel from this book and from this character, but I felt like that was done on purpose because of the way that the character composes himself and things like that. It like made sense to me why you would have that detachment, and for whatever reason that detachment only made me care about the character more, weirdly, because I knew that it was the character distancing himself for reasons, you know? So yeah, I enjoyed this book. All right, and then like I said, the other book that I've read is Three Daughters of Eve by Elif Shafak. I am a fan of Elif Shafak's. Not all of her works have like killed it for me, but overall I've really enjoyed the way that she writes. So in this story, you are following this woman named Peri, who is this beautiful, rich Turkish woman who is on her way with her daughter to this dinner party where her husband's waiting for her along with all these other rich and important people in Istanbul. And on her way there, her purse ends up getting stolen, and she like chases down the guy who stole her purse and ends up getting into a very serious altercation with him. And while they're fighting, this photograph falls out of her purse that shows her when she's in college along with two other girls and this man. And it turns out that those two girls were her friends in college, and that man was one of their professors. And so the story goes back and forth between modern day Perry and then Perry from the past, about her time when she was at university, specifically Oxford, and also about her life before she went off to university and her family and her relationship with her parents and things like that, and just explores these two sort of timelines of who Perry was and who she is now, and the conflict between that, and how Perry has post-university tried to forget about that time in her life a lot and create this whole new world for her, and how she's become someone that she doesn't even realize that back then she would have ever become. And so over the course of the night, she's like thinking about her past and the choices that she's made and the things that occurred, and you are slowly, you know, becoming aware of that as a reader yourself, and just sort of seeing what exactly happened between these friends. So like I said, I really enjoy Elif Shafak's writing. I think the writing in this book is so well done. Like, I fell into this story really quickly and I really enjoyed the writing of it. However, I didn't really enjoy the plot itself. It starts off really, really strong, but then towards the end, it feels like it's meandering quite a bit. It felt like it took a really long time for the past storyline to get to the point where you see Perry at college or at university. I feel like there's a lot of time explaining things about Perry's past that start to feel really repetitive. They talk a lot about the relationship between Perry's mother and father, who were very different from each other, and they fought a lot, and how that impacted her. And it felt over time that those same fights were being repeated over and over again. And obviously that's like what actually happens in life, and Perry as a character had to live through those fights over and over again. But as a reader, it felt really repetitive. And then it felt like it took a really long time for Perry to meet the professor, and it feels like it's supposed to be building up to this huge amazing character, and that character kind of falls flat in my opinion. And the way that it all wraps up at the very, very end, I found to be just really dumb, to be completely honest. I was enjoying the story a lot, but the way it just like wrapped everything up just felt like it needed to be wrapped up, and it didn't happen naturally, or I don't know, the ending was like so disappointing to me. But I loved so much of this. Like, there's a lot of discussions in here about God and faith and religion and things like that, and what it means to be sort of in between all of these different worlds and have conflicting opinions within yourself, and being able to see sort of both sides of things and not really sure where you fall on the spectrum. But it also feels like no real conclusions are ever really made in any significant way. So it kind of feels like at the end of it, like, what was the point of it all? So yeah, that's another reason why this one doesn't quite make the 4-star mark for me. So yeah, if you are someone who enjoys books that are slightly more philosophical in nature, I feel like you would enjoy this book. But I, again, just found the ending to be kind of meh, in my opinion, so I can't, again, give it that like full yay, I love this book. I definitely recommend it, like I have with other Elif Shafak books. So yeah, that is everything I have for this video. Usually at the end of my monthly wrap-ups, I've been doing sort of like a goals check-in, but since it's the end of a quarter, I'm going to do a quarterly goals check-in next week, so you guys can look forward to that to sort of see how I feel like I'm doing so far this year and what goals I want to make for Q2. Otherwise, I don't really have much more to talk about in this video. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read either of these books. I know a lot of people have read The Remains of the Day and really, really loved it. But even if you didn't, feel free to leave a comment letting me know. Otherwise, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave that down in the comment section as well. Otherwise, I will see you guys again next week.